Hello. How's everyone doing here? So, just trying to go live on both of the platforms for Instagram and the Facebook group. So, thank you all. I see that it's having a little bit of trouble for the Facebook group, but thank you all again. Welcome to yet another session of the live Q&A, where I answer all your questions, burning questions about healing from chronic illnesses. Really, hope that this is just something that I can offer more as an educational standpoint, but also just to provide some answers to people who have chronic illnesses and that they really need some help and know where to turn. So again, this is just educational sessions. This is not medical advice. But let's get started. I have 3 important questions that came in today. And feel free always to put your questions on the group or post them, send me a DM, whatever you want to do. So let's get started. I have 3 questions that came in, and I kind of want to give some good answers for all of those. So Sally asked about detox. She said that she's had a rough couple of weeks at work. She's been eating out a lot, and she really does not like how she feels. She really wants to detox. And she's looking for some quick, immediate answers that can work for her. So I gave her 3 different suggestions. If you've had a period, and I sometimes do this if I've traveled a lot and I've really eaten a lot on the road and in the airports and things like that, which I try not to. But if you've had something like that, or like in her case, a lot of work meetings and just, conferences and out eating all the time, then there's 3 things that I recommend. And one of the things is a juice cleanse. So you can find juice cleanses from any health food stores. They do juice cleanses. If you cannot make your own, I really recommend that you make your own. And so for making your own, I recommend like not very any tropical fruits that have a lot of sugar, but things like cucumber, green apple, celery is amazing. You can throw in some parsley or cilantro, even dandelion leaves. All of that will really detox you. And so these are really good. You're giving your GI system, your digestive system a rest at this point from all the stuff and the toxins and all of that, and just constantly having to digest food. And so really a 5-day juice cleanse is very, very good for that. Again, I prefer making the juices all organic at home. And that way you're not getting all these additives and sugar and things like that. So that's one option. The second option I gave her is liver cleanses. You guys can go back in the group and see, I have done many, many videos on liver cleanses, and the liver cleanses that I'm a big proponent of, that I feel like they really help your liver perform at its best. And I know what someone's going to say, and I might get a comment or two that, well, the liver detoxes itself, liver regenerates, the whole 9 yards. Yes, absolutely true. But at some point, especially with the amount of stuff that we are putting in our body on a day-to-day basis, the amount of pesticides, the amount of GMO foods, alcohol, high stress, everything, fertilizers, all that stuff that's found in food. So really, really harmful, and it's really congesting the liver. So yes, under normal circumstances, the liver can regenerate, the liver can detoxify, that's its job. But when it's an overabundance of these stressors, of these toxins, then your liver really does need help. And so I'm a big proponent of liver cleanses. Go back to the group or the page and you'll see a lot of videos that I've done on liver cleanses. The one that I am really, really a big proponent of, researched it. It's been true and tried. I did 7 in 1 year, and then every year since then, I've done about 3 a year. So every 4 months or 5 months, I do one just to kind of really help flush out my liver. And that one is by Global Healing. And you can use code HCIL if you want a 10% discount. But go back into the videos that I just did maybe about a month or 2 ago about liver cleanses. And I talked about the whole liver cleanse system and what I use and how I do it and all of that. So that's a really, really good way, because once you detoxify the liver, then your liver can start doing its own job, which is to detoxify your body. And so you start getting that stuff out of your system. The liver gets it out of your body, and that really, really is helpful. So that's another option that I gave her. And the third option that I gave her is 24-hour fasting. So every so often, or a couple of times a week, to do 24-hour fasting, because what that does, it resets your gut, which is where everything happens. 70 to 80% of your immune system is in your gut. So you can really, help detox your body that way by resetting the gut, giving the gut a break, not having to constantly digest food and all of that, assimilate it. Plus, it just helps reset the gut lining. So every 24 hours or every couple of times a week, you can do a 24-hour fast, and that will really help reset your gut. So these are just three basic things. I mean, there's so many other things that you can do on a day-to-day basis, from sauna, coffee enemas, dry brushing, even taking some supplements like tudka or milk thistle, things like that. Dandelion leaves are amazing for detox. I drink dandelion green tea in the morning, and that's really helpful. So all of those things are great options. I just wanted to give her three major ones to get best bang for her buck. But you can really incorporate a lot of these other things in your life. The second question I got from Marianne is why. So I recently, in my group, in my Instagram and my Facebook group, posted something about high inflammation and how it's a silent killer. And someone reached out and said, well, can you explain that? Can you explain to me about inflammation? Because, nowadays that's all you hear about, inflammation, especially post COVID and things like that. All you're hearing about is inflammation, cytokine storm, all of that. So really, inflammation, when you have chronic inflammation, it is really when your system has just this overload of inflammation, inflammatory markers, all of that in your system. And it can lead to a variety of symptoms, anywhere from constant aches and pains, brain fog. You can have hormonal imbalances if this has been going on for long term. You can have even major things like cardiovascular disease, which is a byproduct of inflammation. 8 of the most common diseases: Alzheimer's, dementia, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, stroke. I mean, a lot of these things are just mainly due to inflammation. And I've made videos before about how inflammation is the cause of cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, all of that stuff. But so in this case, she just wanted me to explain, what is the role and how inflammation. So for an example, when you take cardiovascular disease, so when you have constant inflammation, inflammation is redness. It's just, where something is inflamed, it's kind of red, it's irritated. You've seen inflammation when you have a cut or something. So when you have that constant state of inflammation in the arteries, your body perceives that as an injury. Kind of like if you were to get an injury and a cut on your arm, your body perceives that as an injury, starts starts clotting the blood first, and then it makes a scab over it. So this is the same concept in your arterial walls. When you have high inflammation and constantly the walls of the arteries are being abrased or inflamed, and that really, really then causes cholesterol deposits, because it's your body's way of saying, we are trying to heal all this inflammation. So we're going to bring clotting, we're going to bring cholesterol there and really block these markers. And so that, block this inflammation so that you don't degrade your arterial wall. So it's more of a protective mechanism, but over time, as that continues to accumulate, that arterial wall has all these, cholesterol deposits and plaque and all of that hardens, and that is what blocks blood supply to the heart, to the brain. So chronic inflammation is a major cause of, like I said, 8 of the most prevalent diseases today. Even if you take Alzheimer's or dementia, that is a chronic state of inflammation in the brain. And so the brain, which is really smart, the body is really smart, brain starts making these scabs around that brain, and so that it can really, really protect the brain. So it's a protective mechanism. But in doing so, it's really decreasing the cognitive function of the brain. And that's what those scabs and plaques that form around the brain in Alzheimer's. So it is very, very important to keep your inflammatory load down. and to keep your inflammation down. And how can you do that? I mean, there's a variety of ways. I'm just going to name a few, but decreasing your toxic load. So what we talked about is detoxification. If you constantly have toxins, pesticides, GMO, all of those toxins floating around in the body, your brain starts to try and protect that. Your heart says, we've got to protect from all these toxins. Your liver is storing all these toxins. So decrease your inflammatory load, clean up your diet, really, really clean up your diet, decrease, the amount of sugar that you're having, amount of oil and fried food and all of that stuff, refined carbohydrates, because all of those things are very, very inflammatory. Gluten's very inflammatory. Things like that. Start exercising. That way you can bring your stress load down, but also increase circulation, help with your blood pressure, help with your blood sugars. So start exercising. So there's so many different things. I mean, it just really pertains to leading a very disciplined life, but also just kind of helping your body achieve all of those things along the way that you need for your body to have decreased inflammation. Really changing your diet, like I said, exercise, and sleep is a big one. If anyone says to me, oh, I sleep only 4 hours a night and I do fine, absolutely not okay. Absolutely not. When I got married to my husband and he said, oh, I only sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. My mom was the same way and I do just fine. We've been married, 20 years at this point. I mean, I've really changed that mentality, because when you sleep is when your body detoxifies, your cells regenerate. There's so much going on while you sleep. That it's very, very important to get at least 7 hours of sleep every night, which will help keep your inflammation at bay. So if you're, a woman who's postmenopausal, who's struggling with sleep, you really, really need to work on your sleep, because it really increases your inflammatory load. And at that point, that's when your inflammatory load is high. Inflammation is throughout the body. Your body ends up attacking itself, developing more autoimmune type stuff, arthritis, things like that. So very, very important to decrease your inflammation. So yes, so inflammation is a silent threat, and we really need to bring our inflammatory markers back down and decrease our systemic inflammation as a whole. Third question I got was from Terry. Terry said that she is postmenopausal, she is gaining a lot of weight, and she doesn't know what to do. She said that she's, seen so many videos and has heard all these suggestions of increasing protein, weight training, all of that, but she just doesn't understand it all. So that is one of the things, with functional medicine, we get to the root cause, but especially in my practice, I make sure that not only do we get to the root cause, but I explain to my clients very specifically what is going on in their bodies and why we are doing what we are doing. So hence the reason we have a group like this as well, is to really, really explain, teach, and educate and empower our clients, our patients, so that they can make the right choices. They can do what needs to be done at this point to heal themselves. Because if you just give, clients this blanket thing of let's do XYZ and this is what I need you to do every week, and you're overhauling their diet and their lifestyle and their sleep and all of this stuff, and you're asking them to quit their job, it's not going to work. It's going to backfire. So really, really important that we can explain what is going on. So great question, Terry. So let me start by just saying this. Most people don't realize this, that your whole life, the ovaries do the work of producing all the sex hormones. So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, your ovaries do all this work. As you get older and as you get into perimenopausal states, the ovaries are like, okay, I'm done. I've done my job. I've, produced all the eggs that you needed. You potentially had kids, things like that. So now I'm done. And so when that happens, the ovary then assigns the adrenals to take over the job of producing sex hormones. And so that for the adrenals becomes very, very stressful, because the adrenals are already dealing with stress and fight or flight situations and producing cortisol on a day-to-day basis. So the adrenals are like, whoa, now we've got more work thrown on our plate, and we've got to manage both the sex hormones as well as the cortisol and all of that stuff. There's a couple of other hormones, but in any case, so when that happens, then your estrogen production starts suffering. So what the body does is it starts depositing fat cells around the belly, around the hips, all of that, because your body says, okay, we need estrogen. And fat cells produce estrogen. So we are going to deposit more fat cells to help with estrogen production. So that's one thing that happens. The second thing that happens is because there's such an imbalance of cortisol, too high or too low, your body is like, oh, we really need more glucose. We need glucose to function. And so what ends up happening is you end up, as you go into perimenopausal and even menopause states, you end up becoming insulin resistant. This is a very classic sign of perimenopause and menopause. And so when you become more insulin resistant, that's when your body needs much more insulin to be produced to be able to do the same job that it would have done 20 years ago. And so this is where, when you constantly have this high insulin states, it is a big cause of inflammation. High insulin equals high inflammation. So you really want to keep that insulin level down, which is why they recommend, as you become perimenopause and menopause, to really have high protein, high fiber, and to decrease your carbohydrates, because that will help you not be so insulin resistant. It'll help you come down, and your body needs a lot less insulin, and it makes your cells more insulin sensitive. So you become more insulin resistant in perimenopause and menopause. But then beyond that, that's where it becomes your job to have the right diet, a lot of fiber to get out all the unused or excess hormones that you have, and then really make your body more insulin sensitive by fasting, or intermittent fasting, and also by decreasing your amount of insulin produced by eating a lot of fiber and a lot of protein and less carbs, especially refined carbs. And so really that's what ends up happening. And the thing with menopause is that you end up going into estrogen dominance. And I've made videos on this before. There's two different kinds of estrogen dominance. When you have really high estrogen, your body's producing more and more estrogen relative to how much progesterone you have. And so that creates an imbalance, and that's called estrogen dominance. Or you can have estrogen dominance in a different way, which is decreased progesterone, because you're not ovulating, and that corpus luteum, when it releases the egg, is not producing progesterone. Then you have very low progesterone, and then in return the estrogen is just staying high because there's no progesterone to balance it. So you have very low progesterone. So estrogen dominance can happen in both ways: high estrogen or low progesterone, and that puts you in a state of estrogen dominance, which again then causes weight gain. And you really need to change that imbalance with diet, exercise, sleep, decreasing insulin resistance, so becoming more insulin sensitive. And that's why, now that you can understand, when you watch all those videos and fitness influencers and women's health influencers, they explain to you, oh, you need to have more protein, oh, you need to have more fat, more fiber. It'll make sense that why you need to do all of those things. So these are the 3 questions I had for today. If you have any questions, send me a DM or post it on the Instagram, Facebook group. I'm available at all of them, and then I will cover them next week on the live. Till then, thank you and have a great week.